Hey girl, hey. I know it's been a while. Nice to see you again. So I really wanted to come on and talk about the latest book that I finished. I finished it a couple of weeks ago, but I just literally have not had I've had time, but I just haven't set myself down long enough to actually film something. So this is me doing that. Um Quick little life update before we get started. Life is life, but my car has been acting up this morning, like heavy. Like Tony has had an attitude all morning and she been tripping, but we're gonna do this video anyways. So the book I want to talk about is All About Love by Bell Hooks. Funniest thing, you know that Childish Gambino song from his latest album that was like all titled with the song timestamps, and in one of his songs he talks about something about all about that love got me on some bell hooks. I never knew that he was talking about this book, so I just thought that was really cool that I could put two and two together. But my general thoughts about the book, I really did enjoy it. It very much so reminded me of the Vibrate Higher book by Layla Dali, in the sense that it's not a book that you need to read in order. It feels like a companion. It feels like something that you can carry through your life. It feels like something you definitely want to come back to whenever you need it. So that's I really enjoyed that part of the book. I also really like that it almost feels like a big, huge research project because she used so many different resources to pull and make her points. But I like that she also added her own personal anecdotes. So it felt very grounded, but it also felt personal. And I just love that grounded part of the book and that personal touch to it. So I really did love that. And yeah, like obviously I love the red cover. It's very lovey or whatever, and it is heavy. I will say that this book, very similar to Vibrate Hard Daily, this one might have been a little bit heavier because it was talking about love, and so that can get some feelings riled up. But it was very heavy in the sense that I found myself needing to take breaks. Like sometimes I would get through a chapter and I'm just like, ugh! I'm like, it's so much that I really did have to take a break because I really did dive into these words. And some of her words just hit so deep and made me question a lot about my past, my family of origin, where I am now, how my family of origins impacts how I behave and interact with love as an adult. And so yeah, it was definitely one of those books where it wasn't a quick read. Like it was like, okay, I'm gonna read a chapter and I need to just, girl, you're in my face, you're at my neck, and I don't need it. And then I would pick it back up again. So it's kind of one of those books. So that was my general thoughts about the book, and I just want to talk about the chapters that I really did love. I mean, I loved all the chapters, but these were specific chapters that I just thought were very important. So obviously the first chapter is clarity, and the premise behind that chapter was why it's necessary to define love. And so her whole what is the assertion was how we need to, and there's a dire need to demystify what love is and what it means, and the environments in which love exists and the environments in which they do not, and also unlinking this association between love and dysfunction. And I thought that was really great, and how this cultural consciousness that we have as a society about love is very, it's a feeling, you just know it when you feel it. And and I think that chapter really did connect with me because as a kid, like I think I've always been somewhat of a romantic in that sense, but the practical how do you know that you love someone, I've always fought with, because nobody could ever really like tell me what they felt or like what it was. And so I just thought that like, I was like, oh, I ain't felt it yet. That's why I don't know what people are talking about. But she just makes a really good point that like when you can't clearly understand and define what love is, you leave it open to so many definitions, and people can define it the way that they want to. And she says that a lot of times as a culture and as a society, we do that to contend with the lovelessness in our lives. Let's pause right there and let's deal with that. That was heavy because she was essentially saying when you can't define it, everything under the sun, if somebody's doing something destructive to you, if it's dysfunctional, if it's this, that, and the other, you can call it love because no one's clarifying it. And sometimes having something or the semblance of what we call love is better than not having love in our lives at all. And also, it's hard to have people look over their lives and really ask them, have you ever really, really been loved? And a lot of us sometimes would have to be like, no. And the definition she gives for love, I really did enjoy. She says that love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Love is as love does. Love is an act of will, both in intention and in action. So I really did love that definition. And this is something else that I thought was really very, very cool. She says there's a difference between cathexis, which cathexis is a word I didn't even know existed, but there is a difference between cathexis and love. When we feel deeply drawn to someone, we invest feelings or emotion, and that is cathexing. And that's very different than, the previous definition that I gave about love. And so I just really love that. And then another question that I had while she was giving her own personal anecdotes was, I asked myself, what patterns of behaviors negate my capacity to give and receive love? And that'll lead into another chapter, which is the chapter about commitment, which was essentially your commitment to yourself. And so when I was reading that first chapter, one thing that really did hit me was because I've been dealing with this feeling of being afraid to honestly receive love, because I feel like I've gone over this in previous videos, but I've always been more of a pursuer. And I know that I'm a girl, I'm a woman, and that's just not how it's supposed to be, which fair, who knows. But I've always taken that role of being the pursuer, and it's hard for me to say that I don't necessarily know how to receive love because I'm so used to just giving it. And I think that I did say that in a previous video, that I had to recognize also with reading this book that the way I contend with lovelessness in my own life is that I focus on other people and giving them love so much that I don't have to contend with it my own self. And I wrote this little excerpt from what I was feeling while I was reading, and I said, when I reflected over my past romantic encounters, I've never felt love from anyone. I associated those situations with love and built this fear around it, but in actuality, I'm afraid of pain, addiction, abandonment, and apathy. Love, I'm not afraid of. How can you be afraid of something you've never experienced? And that was a point when I was like, I've built such this oh, can I feel love? Do I deserve love? Because of my situations of never really feeling that from somebody else. And so when I potentially got into a situation where somebody wanted to, I was like, this don't feel right because I'm not placed in the role that I'm usually in, and that scares me. But I had to really, she was making the difference between cathexing and love. I'm not afraid of love, but it's very understandable that I'm afraid of abandonment, apathy. I'm afraid of addiction and pain. Those are things that I've experienced, and I don't want to do that again. And so I think that's a very demystifying and clarifying in your own head what you're really afraid of. Because a lot of people are like, I'm afraid to fall in love again. I'm afraid to try again. And it's you're not afraid to try for something that is real love. But it's fair to say that I'm afraid to be in a painful situation, to feel abandoned again, to feel apathy from someone, to feel addicted to someone, or to feel this cathexing of deep emotion that is just, I can't control that. She also talks about how people say, you fall in love all the time. And she's like, we don't just fall in love. If you think that certain things don't connect together for you to create those feelings for somebody, like, you know. So I just love that chapter about demystifying and why that was just so important. So going back to what I said about what patterns or behaviors negate your capacity to give and receive love, another chapter that I really love was the commitment chapter. And again, like, the commitment chapter was essentially about commitment to yourself. And I think that's another thing that I love about the book, that the book was not about romantic love. Like, romantic love was a very small chapter in this book, but this book was really about love in itself, and like what love is, and that being just love at its core and not about romance and things like that. And so she talked about friends, family, living by a love ethic in just your day-to-day life, and also loving yourself. And so the commitment one really did hit me too, because it also was reminiscent of Vibrate Higher Daily, about just really contending with your own stuff. And so she talks about self-awareness doesn't equate to self-recovery, and that there's a difference between being self-aware of yourself and moving into a state of self-recovery. And she talks about how do we move past old narratives of ourselves into more constructive, life-affirming thoughts, patterns, and behaviors. And that's another thing that I had to really, again, had to get with Andrea, and I had to be like, girl, let's talk. Because like I've been said, I know that this year my mind has definitely changed, and I've taken that burden of how everything is on me, and that there's a level of holding someone accountable for their actions and what they did to you, and also holding yourself accountable. And that line was about holding yourself accountable and really moving into self-recovery and creating constructive, life-affirming thoughts, patterns, and behaviors. And so I had to really say, like, am I really trying to align myself with where I want to be in life? And it's also about having some type of congruency with your actions and your beliefs. Like, if I believe that I want to go into this higher self to be this better woman, then my actions have to align with that. And so I had to really sit with myself and say, are my behaviors, my thoughts, and my patterns aligning with my self-recovery? So, and also that idea of breaking these old narratives of yourself, like, that's also something that I found so interesting about this book, is how sometimes like, for me, I know that I have always been the pursuer. I have always been the short end of the stick. I have always been the girl in the unrequited love, which was not love, but you know what I'm saying. And I've always been stuck in that narrative of myself. And so when I get into situations where it's like someone genuinely wants to give me love, I'm so stuck in this narrative of like, I can only give it. That it is impossible for me to receive it, and it is impossible for me to just be myself and you love me enough for that. Like, I have to be trying. I have to be doing something extraordinary to get people to love me. And I realize how that's so detrimental to my own self, and how it is a dire need for me to move out of that narrative of my life. And so I just really enjoyed that chapter as well. The next chapter that I really loved was the community chapter. And this one was, I love this part because it was just such a reframing of what your life can be. And the community chapter, at least what I got from it, was how life can be so much better living in a circle of love versus random single points. And so the community chapter really hit me because it was really talking about, like I said before, reimagining what your life can be like. Having a love ethic throughout your whole life, like having a loving work environment, loving friends, loving family, loving romantic relationships, instead of having like those singular points, and how better things can be if you're fully engulfed and wrapped up in love, and how much more fulfilling and peaceful and centered your life can be when you're circled around that in a community of love, instead of trying to find those like people here and there. And so, yeah, like, and her whole point about living by a love ethic, I just really did enjoy. And the last one was healing. I think the biggest thing from that chapter that I really enjoyed was that healing is an act of communion. And of course, you know, we are all on our own personal journeys, but basically, Andrea, speaking to yourself, like, healing is an act of communion. You don't have to do or go at things alone. It's okay to rely on people. It's okay to reach out to people. It's okay to let someone help you and to heal, while also to heal with people. And that you don't have to come out perfect or go into your cocoon and come out, you know. It's okay to let people see you throughout the journey. And that was just a very I just really enjoyed that, and also the whole idea of count it all joy, and that life is as beautiful as you want to see it as. Life is what you want to see it as. And you know, even with my car stuff today, it's like count it all joy. You know, like that car has really seen me through a lot for 4 years before it's had any major problems. So, and just being thankful for this time, this life that I have, and just having that immense deep love for life itself, and just, I don't know. So that was basically the book. I really enjoyed it, and I don't really know what my question would be. But I guess it's just like, girl, you know, when you think about that definition, and when you think about this book, girl, I'm like, what? This is the definition of love, and the book. It's really a question of like, where is your circle of love? Like, where do you really feel love in your life? You know? So that's it, girl. I'll talk to you later when I finish the next book. Bye.